Hello, boys and girls. As we wrap up our Reading to Learn unit, you guys have been really reading a lot of nonfiction texts, and now we're going to be going to our new unit called Character Study, Character Traits, and that's exactly what it sounds like. It's getting to know a character. And so just to kind of compare it to something that you are probably familiar with is being on the ICS playground and being a new student or coming to ICS or going to a new grade for the first time this year or whenever the first time it was for you to come and getting used to getting familiar with the new classmates, to get used to Miss Yang or your new teacher, and just getting familiar with new people, the newness of it all. We have to get to know each other, just like we get to know characters in a book. We're going to develop relationships with the characters in the book. We're going to really get to know them and miss them and want to know more about them. And so today, I'm going to really focus on teaching you getting to know our characters by notice how they talk and act. And so Miss Yang has, because of Winn-Dixie with me, this is going to be our mentor text. So it's going to be what Miss Yang uses to teach the different examples throughout this study. And so I want you guys to follow along through this PowerPoint. Also, if you have a copy of it, feel free to follow along with me and read it on your own time. But you also need to make sure you have your own book that is developing characters. So somebody had a book, they said that they were maybe reading Harry Potter, or you're reading Nancy Drew or Magic Treehouse. You need to make sure you have a book that has a person in it that is a character that's growing. So this is not a time to get a nonfiction book anymore. Okay, so we're not doing reading to learn. We're really focusing on how a character talks. So as I'm reading, notice how the main character, how she talks and how she acts, okay? You can follow along with me here. My name is India Opal Buloni, and last summer, my daddy, the preacher, sent me to the store for a box of macaroni and cheese, some white rice, and 2 tomatoes. And I came back with a dog. This is what happened. I walked into the produce section of the Winn-Dixie grocery store to pick out my 2 tomatoes, and I almost bumped right into the store manager. He was standing there all red-faced, screaming and waving his arms around. "Who let a dog in here?" he kept on shouting. "Who let a dirty dog in here?" At first, I didn't see a dog. There was just a lot of vegetables rolling around on the floor. Tomatoes and onions and green peppers. And there was what seemed like a whole army of Winn-Dixie employees running around waving their arms just the same way the store manager was waving his. And then the dog came running around the corner. He was a big dog and ugly. And it looked like he was having a real good time. His tongue was hanging out and he was wagging his tail. He skidded to a stop and smiled right at me. I had never before in my life had seen a dog smile, but that is what he did. He pulled back his lips and showed me all his teeth. Then he wagged his tail so hard that he knocked some oranges off a display, and they went rolling everywhere, mixing in with the tomatoes and onions and green peppers. The manager screamed, "Somebody grab that dog!" The dog went running over to the manager, wagging his tail and smiling. He stood up on his hind legs. You could tell that all he wanted to do was get face to face with the manager and thank him for the good time he was having in the produce department. But somehow, he ended up knocking the manager over, and the manager must have been having a bad day, because lying there on the floor, right in front of everybody, he started to cry. The dog leaned over him, real concerned, and licked his face. "Please," said the manager, "somebody call the pound." "Wait a minute," I hollered. "That's my dog. Don't call the pound." All the Winn-Dixie employees turned around and looked at me, and I knew I had done something big and maybe stupid too. But I couldn't help it. I couldn't let that dog go to the pond. Here, boy, I said. All right, we're going to stop right here for just a moment. And make sure you guys have post-it notes with you. But I'm going to go ahead and stick a post-it note on this page. And here, I'm going to notice, okay, who's the main character here? Okay, it's India Opal. And what is she saying and what is she doing here that I'm noticing, especially at the beginning of the book? And what does that tell me about who she is? Noticing how the character talks. And so I might do a little T-chart that has multiple layers and write down her name, Opal or India Opal. How is she acting? Okay, and so this is the time for me to, I'm going to go ahead and go to the next slide. It's going to show me the post-it note at a bigger way so that you guys can kind of see it. So here on my acting side, she, stood up to the store manager, and she was very bold. She took Winn-Dixie home. Okay, so those are two of her actions, okay? So this is going to tell me something about her later. And we'll learn that next time. And then going to talk, she says, "That's my dog," she hollered. And hollering is like you'd yell it across the playground to yell at your friend to get over here. Hollering. So she's hollering in the middle of a grocery store, saying, "Hey, that's my dog." Is it her dog? Okay, so we'll have to learn and read more to find out. And so I'm going to go ahead and finish this chapter. I don't have the slides, but I'll go ahead and just finish it so that we don't end midway. The dog stopped licking the manager's face and put his ears up in the air and looked at me. He was trying to remember where he knew me from. "Here, boy," I said again. And then I figured that the dog was probably just like everybody else in the world, that he would want to get called by a name. Only I didn't know what his name was. So I just said the first thing that came to my head. I said, "Here, Winn-Dixie." And that dog came trotting over to me just like he had been doing it his whole life. The manager sat up and gave me a hard stare, like maybe I was making fun of him. "It's his name," I said. "Honest." The manager said, "Don't you know not to bring a dog into a grocery store?" "Yes, sir," I told him. "He got in by mistake. I'm sorry, it won't happen again." "Come on, Winn-Dixie," I said to the dog. I started walking and he followed along behind me as I went out of the produce department and down the cereal aisle and past all the cashiers and out the door. Once we were safe outside, I checked him over real careful, and he didn't look that good. He was big but skinny. You could see his ribs. And there were bald patches all over him, places where he didn't have fur at all. Mostly, he looked like a big piece of old brown carpet that had been left out in the rain. "You're a mess," I told him. "I bet you don't belong to anyone." He smiled at me. He did that thing again where he pulled back his lips and showed me his teeth. He smiled so big that it made him sneeze. It was like he was saying, "I know I'm a mess. Isn't it funny?" It's hard not to immediately fall in love with a dog who has a good sense of humor. "Come on," I told him. "Let's see what the preacher has to say about you." And the two of us, me and Winn-Dixie, started walking home. All right. And at that, I could also add a couple notes that Opal, she thinks on the spot, makes up names for Winn-Dixie, takes Winn-Dixie home. What kind of speech does she have? Okay, she says, "Come on." "Yes, sir." She has very good manners and speaks to the manager. And so, yeah, those are just some things that I'm noticing about Opal. Today, I want you to go ahead and read your character book, get your own post-it notes, and read for about 20 to 30 minutes. Just notice how the character talks and start adding a couple post-it notes as you're reading. And you can take a picture of that and go ahead and post that onto Seesaw. I'll just label it post-it notes for character talk in there. All right. Bye, guys. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll be available later today to do a meet and greet. All right. Happy reading.